Wife of 25 years avoids one-on-one time with me, yet is vibrant with others, leaving me feeling like an outsider in my own marriage. I'm a 50-year-old man, and after 25 years of marriage, I've been feeling this growing distance from my wife, who's 48. It's tough. Sometimes it feels like she just doesn't want to spend any quality time alone with me. Sure, we run errands together, coordinate family obligations, but whenever I try to suggest something that's just about the two of us, I almost always get shot down. There are so many examples that keep playing over in my head. One evening, I asked her if she wanted to go on a walk together. She told me she was exhausted from work. Hours later, I caught her on the treadmill, headphones in, getting her steps in. Another time, a Broadway show was coming through town and I thought it'd be fun. I pitched her the idea, but she brushed it off, saying she'd heard it wasn't very good and maybe we should wait for a better one. Not long after, she shot me a text in the middle of my workday. Her friend had an extra ticket and she was going that night. I felt blindsided. Then there was the lake cabin. A friend mentioned it was a shame we couldn't use theirs for a weekend. I just stared at him. I had no clue what he was talking about. Apparently, he'd offered it to us, but my wife told him we were already booked. We weren't. Even with things as simple as watching a game together, it's our team, something we've enjoyed in the past. I got not in the mood. At halftime, I walk into our room and she's asleep with the game running on her tablet. It stings, every time. What's odd is, she still makes time for her friends. We spend time with our adult kids and go out in groups, but as soon as it's just us, she retreats. I tried bringing it up, told her how lonely I was feeling. First, she brushed me off, telling me, couples don't need to do everything together. When I pushed a little more, pointing out that as it stands, we do almost nothing alone together, she did open up. We had a real conversation, finally. We both agreed to put in more effort, communicate better. For the last couple of months, we've walked the dogs every evening. I try hard to be there, initiating deeper conversations, buying her thoughtful little gifts, cleaning up more, all the little acts of service that make her feel loved. Things have gotten a bit better, but it's starting to feel habitual, like we're in a routine: dinner, dog walk, 15 or 30 minutes in the same room, and then she finds a reason to go off by herself. I've tried to plan a few dates. To her credit, she has too, but she always seems to find a reason to cancel or reschedule at the last second. What really pushed me to my breaking point was our recent weekend trip with other couples. Before we left, I sat down and wrote her a heartfelt note, telling her how much I was looking forward to the trip and how much I love and appreciate her. I left it in her car that morning, along with some of her favorite candy. All day I waited to hear from her, and when she got home, all I got was a casual, "Thanks for the note, that was sweet. Are you ready to leave?" Throughout the weekend, as long as we were in a group, she was all laughs and smiles, completely engaged, but anytime we were alone, she'd drift to her phone, scrolling endlessly through social media, barely looking up. Maybe I set my expectations too high for that trip, maybe I just hoped too much, but it hurt, and it only made everything feel heavier. It reminds me of dating, those moments when you're way more into someone than they are into you. I know what it looks like, but I have to say, there's no way she's cheating. There's not a single sign that points that direction. I've cut out some other similar moments just to keep things from dragging on, but this is the pattern. I keep racking my brain, wondering if anyone else has been here before, feeling pushed away, but not sure how to address it without it turning into a fight or her brushing me off again. I'm lost. One thing I do want to set straight: I know some might assume there's more going on, but I'm as sure as I can possibly be that there's no one else. My wife is a good person, with a truly caring heart. I know this is my perspective, and she could absolutely tell her side, too, maybe about things I've done or haven't done that led us here. No matter how things turn out, I love her deeply. And I can honestly say I appreciate every bit of advice and every different point of view that's helped me stop and really think about all of this. Update 1. After reflecting on everything that's happened, I didn't expect to have an update so soon, but, after processing a lot of thoughts, I knew another conversation was necessary. The feedback really got me thinking about the issues in our marriage. When I sat down with her again, I brought up some of the main points I hadn't addressed well before: our division of household chores, my tendency to be too needy, and the amount of social responsibility she carries. I have to acknowledge how eye-opening it was when several people suggested menopause or perimenopause might be affecting her. I went straight to her and asked about it. That conversation was a breakthrough. She opened up about how much she's been struggling with perimenopause. I knew it was happening in the background, but I never really understood how profoundly it was affecting her daily. She explained how she's been leaning heavily on her friends for support, particularly a group of women who are all dealing with the same thing. Oddly enough, that's the same group she traveled with recently. So much of her emotional energy goes into that group, and that's left her with less energy to connect with me. Honestly, it stung at first to hear she's sharing more with them, but I'm grateful she has someone to turn to. She told me she feels both mentally and physically drained most nights, ready for bed right after dinner, but even then, sleep doesn't come easily. She's working with her doctor, but so far, they haven't found the right relief. Hearing her lay it all out for me was a gut punch: how much she's been masking normalcy all day, pushing through when she feels anything but normal. When she finally gets home, she just can't keep up the act. Even the thought of this past weekend was overwhelming for her, and by the time she made it there, all she could manage was group activities and zoning out on TikTok to recharge. It wasn't until I brought up my feelings a few months ago that she even realized how things were hitting me. But since then, she's been trying. She admitted that from her side, I seemed like I was fine, that nothing was wrong. I guess my generally stoic nature works against me here. People misread my moods all the time, and I can't expect her to magically pick up on my silences or body language. If I want her to understand me, I have to actually tell her what's going on in my head. Of course, none of this means our problems are magically solved. We still have a lot to work through. We've both taken each other for granted and made too many assumptions. Communication is the thing we both need to focus on if we're going to move forward together. For now, we're setting goals, better communication, more patience, and we've decided to try a couple of counseling sessions to see where it takes us. I can't say what the future holds, but I'm hopeful. Update 2. A couple of months ago, I found myself feeling deeply lonely in my 25-year marriage. I'm a 50-year-old man married to my wife, who's 48. Over the years, our one-on-one time had just disappeared, not because either of us was busy with work or family, but because whenever I suggested a date, a walk, or even just sitting on the porch with coffee, she'd either decline, seem disengaged, or cancel in favor of group outings, friends, or family activities. I tried talking to her, making plans, thinking up small ways to reconnect, but nothing seemed to click. I'll admit, the loneliness started eating at me. I questioned if she even wanted my company anymore. Eventually, I confronted her about the distance I was feeling. Through some honest and, frankly, overdue conversations, she opened up about something I never considered: perimenopause. She talked about how it was draining the life out of her, keeping her constantly tired, robbing her of sleep, and leaving her emotionally spent. That admission hit me hard. I hadn't realized how much she was struggling, and neither of us had voiced how much we'd been taking each other for granted. That night, we agreed nothing was going to be magically resolved, but we promised each other to try harder, to communicate better, to be more patient, and to give counseling a shot. Now, a couple of months later, things have shifted. They aren't perfect, but they're noticeably better. We started seeing a counselor together, and to my surprise, it made a real difference. I braced myself, expecting to be told I was wrong and needed to change, but what really happened is that the neutral ground let us both talk freely. I could finally hear what she was saying without my own frustration getting in the way, and she actually got to see how drained I was feeling. The therapist helped us see each other's perspectives, and that alone was a game changer. I've thrown myself into reading about perimenopause, and, well, I'm pretty sure it sucks. Some days are good, some are rough. Now, when my wife announces at 7 p.m. that she needs to head to bed, I let her. Is it still lonely sometimes? Sure. But I don't direct that loneliness at her anymore. Understanding what she's going through shifted my outlook. I no longer see those quiet nights alone as rejection. Funny thing, too, I had always felt our solo time together always revolved around practical errands. She explained that she never really needed help with grocery shopping. She just wanted an excuse to hang out with me. That completely changed how I perceived those little outings. Suddenly, picking up eggs and milk became another chance to just be together. When I looked back, I realized a lot of the hurt I felt was real, but it had also grown because I let it simmer without saying anything. For too long, I let resentment build up, and when you stack up a year's worth of tiny disappointments, it all just feels insurmountable. We both made mistakes, but I'm owning my part for letting my grievances pile up instead of talking about them sooner. Since then, we've gone on several dates, a lot more than we had in the last few years. The real turning point for me happened just last night. After a brutal month at work and another late night, I texted her to say I'd be late. She replied right away, told me she was sorry I was stuck at work, and that she was making a dinner reservation for us over the weekend so we could catch up. Her taking that initiative really hit me. It was a quiet, meaningful sign of how far we've come. We've adopted some practical routines to stay connected, too. Every week, we have a sort of staff meeting to go over the family calendar, plan meals, and, importantly, talk about the positives and opportunities in our relationship. It sounds cheesy, but it works. Since she loses steam as the day drags on, a lot of our dates have shifted to breakfast or brunch. We also discovered our local theater does early morning movies, 9:30 a.m. showings, which turned out to be perfect for us. Things aren't set in stone, and we're still learning and figuring things out, but we're communicating so much better, being more intentional, and giving each other a lot more grace. Watching my own parents later in life, especially after the kids moved out, I really believe in older couples making time for just themselves. It completely rekindled my parents' relationship after they retired, and I see now how crucial that is for us too. So, here we are, still working, still learning, but finally moving in the right direction together. Update 3. Our counselor gave us a weird little homework assignment: plan a date the other person would like, keep it simple, and finish before lunch. No phone scrolling, no multitasking, no we should also pick up. Tacked on. I assumed I'd be the one setting something up. She's been exhausted most nights and mornings are the only time she has any gas in the tank, but on Wednesday she texted me at 5:45 a.m. Sneakers. Coffee. No questions. I came downstairs to 2 travel mugs, a sunrise just starting, and her in a baseball cap I hadn't seen since the kids were in middle school. We drove in that comfortable, pre-dawn quiet. 15 minutes later, we pulled into our minor league ballpark. The whole place was empty, no cars, no noise, just a groundskeeper hosing down the infield. My wife waved like they were old friends. Turns out a woman from her Friday breakfast group does marketing for the team and got us in early. The groundskeeper let us walk right down to the edge of the field. We sat with our feet dangling over the warning track and drank coffee while the sun came up over right field. It was the strangest, simplest feeling, like we had rented the world for an hour. No one needed anything from us. No screens. No kids. No errands. Just birds and the low hum of the hose and the smell of wet dirt that took me straight back to summers with our son's little league. We talked, but not in the heavy, fix-us way. She told me her doctor had adjusted her treatment and, for the first time in months, she'd slept through the night twice in a row. She said the silence of the morning made her brain feel less crowded. I told her it felt like a magic trick, sitting where we've yelled ourselves hoarse 100 times, and hearing her laugh bounce around the seats. That might have been enough for a normal week, but it didn't stop there. That same friend with the ballpark texted again that night. Her parents' lake cabin was open for the weekend. No pressure. No group. My wife was the one who looked at me and said, "Let's just go." I tried to play it cool and not spin up expectations. I packed like we were going to any other weekend, sweatshirts, the dogs, a couple of paperbacks, snacks I knew she liked. An hour after we got there, a storm rolled in. One of those big summer ones that turn everything green-gray and flicker the power. By dinner, the cabin went dark. No Wi-Fi, no lights, just a flashlight, a lantern we found in a closet, and a gas stove that still worked. I cooked grilled cheese in a cast iron pan while she sat cross-legged on the counter handing me slices of tomato like we were 25 again in our first apartment. The dogs stationed themselves like sentries in front of the sliding door and growled at thunder like it owed them money. We ate on the floor by the fireplace, listening to the rain hit the lake so hard it looked like the surface was boiling. When it slowed to a drizzle, she grabbed my hand and pulled me onto the covered porch. We watched lightning spider across the far tree line. She leaned into me and said, "I've felt like a broken appliance for a year." No drama in her voice, just flat honesty. She told me she'd been scared that if she gave me time one-on-one, I'd see how flat her battery was and be disappointed. She admitted it was easier with friends because she could keep it light and tap out without anyone clocking it. She said she was sorry for lying about the cabin the first time. She was just afraid she'd get there and not be able to be fun. I told her I was sorry for acting like every no was a referendum on us. We didn't fix everything in that moment, but we put a lot of words on a table that's been covered with other things for too long. At some point, a raccoon stole a whole bag of peanut M&Ms we'd left on the porch. We watched the little bandit waddle away in the rain, candy clacking in the bag, and I laughed so hard I cried. She laughed so hard she had to sit down. We stood there like idiots on a wet porch, shaking with hysterics, and it cut something loose in both of us. We went to bed early because there wasn't much else to do without power. We didn't try to force anything. We lay there in the dark with the windows cracked open, counting the spaces between thunder and lightning like our kids used to do. In the back seat, I made a joke about how we should have kept score. In the middle of the night, I woke up to her hand finding mine. She whispered, "I missed you," in the kind of voice people only use in the dark when they don't want to scare a thought away. At dawn, the storm had moved on. The whole lake was a sheet of glass. It made the trees look upside down. We took the old aluminum canoe off the rack and pushed out, the dogs sighing at us from the dock like disapproving grandparents. We didn't say much, just paddled to the middle and drifted. A blue heron lifted off from the reeds and flew right past us, slow and prehistoric, like something out of another time. She pointed and smiled and I had the weirdest feeling we were looking forward at the same thing for the first time in a while. On the way home, we stopped for cheap diner pancakes on a whim. I went digging in the glove box for sunglasses and found my own handwriting. The note I'd left her before the couple's weekend months ago was folded, soft from being opened a lot. I must have made a face because she reached over and said, "I kept it there." I read it in the parking lot that night and twice the next day and 100 times since. I just didn't know how to answer it then. She looked embarrassed and relieved at once. Hearing that didn't erase the hurt of that weekend, but it changed the shape of it. Since we've been back, we haven't tried to bottle the cabin and pour it onto regular life. It's still our same kitchen and the same calendar and the same 2 dogs who will bark at a leaf. But we did one thing different. Every morning this week, even the crazy ones where I had a 7:30 meeting and she had to be out the door by 8, we slid our phones face down to the far end of the table and sat with our coffee. 10 minutes. No rules beyond that. Some mornings we just sat shoulder to shoulder and watched our neighbor try to coax his garbage can out of the grip of a very determined raccoon. Other mornings we traded 2 sentences about the day and kissed like it was a dare. It sounds dumb written out, but I feel it. She's sleeping better. Not every night, but enough that it's noticeable. There's a lightness that's crept back in around the edges. Yesterday she texted me a photo of the storefront of a little studio downtown. Apparently they do beginner dance classes at 8 a.m. on Saturdays. She followed it with, "We'll probably step on each other, but I want to try." I stared at my phone like it was some rare bird that landed on our porch rail. I wrote back, "I'm yours for every wrong step." I don't know if any of this sounds big from the outside. To me, It feels like someone slid a window open in a stuffy room. I'm not pretending we're magically different people now. We're not. But I can finally see us again. And this morning, on our walk, she reached out without saying anything and threaded her arm through mine like muscle memory. I didn't realize how much I'd missed the weight of her there until I felt it. Update 4. We went to that 8 a.m. dance class. The studio was up a flight of old stairs that complained underfoot. Inside smelled like lemon oil and wood that had stories. Sun was throwing long windows across the floor, catching dust like confetti. A woman with a neat gray bun and a man in suspenders clapped their hands and told us to stand soft-kneed. We were two left shoes at first. She stepped on me. I stepped on her. We grinned like kids who'd gotten caught stealing gum. An older couple floated past us like they had somewhere better to be in 1947. The teacher kept saying, "Don't count it, feel it." At some point, my wife's cap came off and a little sweat curled hair at her temples and she did that quick shakeout she does when she's loosening her shoulders before a tough day. It looked like the opposite of bracing. It looked like letting. They rotated partners at one point and an earnest guy in a band tee took my hands and said, "Hi, I'm Mike," while my wife disappeared to the other side with the suspenders man. She shot me a look that said, "Don't you dare make a joke," and then smiled at something the instructor told her. It hit me funny. I've watched that smile from bleachers and pews and car passenger seats for 25 years, but there was a new slice to it I couldn't place. After class, we sat on the curb with paper cups and sore feet. She wiggled her toes in her sneakers and said, "I forgot my body could learn a new thing." It felt like she wasn't just talking about her feet. 2 mornings later the hot water heater gave up on living. At 6:10 a.m., I heard a noise I still don't have good words for, like a horse trying to clear its throat, and then a sheet of water introduced itself to our basement. I ran downstairs in boxers and one sock and almost went skiing on the concrete. By the time I found the shutoff, she was behind me in a hoodie, hair up, phone lighting the switchboard like she was calling mission control. We were two people who've moved around each other 1,000 times in kitchens and hallways and parking lots. The muscle memory kicked in hard. I tossed towels. She choked off a drip with a wrench and language that would have made the bun lady from class faint. The dogs stood at the top of the stairs making their "Are we firefighters now?" faces. The plumber showed up with his own soundtrack of boot squeaks and pipe clanks. When he left, the basement smelled like pennies and raincoats. We sat barefoot on the cold step with our forearms touching, drinking mediocre coffee and eating still cold cinnamon rolls out of the tin because the power tricked us and then came back and anyway we earned them. She leaned into my shoulder and said, "I'm at 9% today." I said, "We can plug you in later." That became a thing. After that, actual numbers. No exposition. No apologies. Just a weather report. There's a weird relief in being told it might drizzle. Her doctor tweaked her regimen again. 2 steps forward, 1 slide on a slick floor backward. A week ago she had a run of nights that felt like sleeping inside a toaster oven. She took her low battery to bed at 7:15 and I did not take it personally. At 9:08, my phone lit up with a text from upstairs, 12% but charging. It made me laugh out loud alone in the living room, which is a good sound to hear from your own mouth. On Sunday, our street did a small thing that ended up feeling big. The city put on some kind of porch festival. Neighbors sign up and little bands hop house to house in the morning. Our next door guy taped flyers to mailboxes with blue painter's tape and asked if we had a porch with a good stoop vibe. We have a porch with 2 chairs that try to throw you every time you sit, so apparently yes. We said sure. Saturday night we strung up the cheap lights from the garage and found sidewalk chalk and she drew a lopsided compass on the concrete that pointed to coffee, bathroom, and donuts because she's the sort of person who doesn't think about a festival without thinking about where strangers will pee. At 8:35 a.m., 3 high school kids with a borrowed drum kit set up on our steps while the raccoon from across the street sat like a suspicious uncle on our neighbor's fence. People appeared with folding chairs like they're born holding them. Someone's toddler put a rock in our hydrangea and clapped for herself. Her Friday breakfast friends came with handheld fans they'd clearly stolen from a wedding. My wife and I stood in the gentle chaos like hosts at a party we were also just attending. The band did a cover of something fast and people snapped along in that way no one ever does on beat. Then the girl singer cleared her throat and said into the mic, "This one's for. I think they're called the Porch People?" and pointed her chin at us. The first notes of our first dance song from our wedding slid out so tentative I almost missed it. My wife looked at me, not shy so much as checking if I'd meet her. "We're going to be so embarrassing," she whispered. "We already are," I said. My hands found her, hers found my shoulders like they were legally required to be there. We slow danced in broad daylight on our own cement with a dozen neighbors and 3 teenagers and a raccoon as witnesses. I don't know if my feet still remembered because of the dance class or because they never forgot. People whooped in that soft morning way, like they didn't want to scare the good feeling off. The girl in the band messed up a chord and then found it again and smiled with all her teeth. Later, our daughter sent a photo she took from the curb. "Look at you too," was all the text said. In the picture you can see the string light still on even though the sun is up, my shirt wrinkled in a way that would drive my mother insane, and my wife's eyes closed, which she hates in photos, but I love this one because her face looks unarmored. The raccoon is in the corner like an omen who changed his mind. None of this has been without stumbles. On Tuesday, I took a good morning and tried to load it up like a pack mule. I asked if she wanted to do breakfast, then a walk, then maybe pick out plants. She put her mug down and said, gently but clearly, "You're stacking." I stood there like a kid with too many things in his hands about to drop all of them. Then we laughed and unstacked. Coffee now. A walk if the battery says yes. Plants another day. Somehow saying that out loud made it feel like we were in charge of time again, at least a little bit. Counselor homework this week was to say one specific thank you a day out loud. At first it felt like diet advice, annoyingly simple, destined to be ignored. Then I caught her twice. She thanked me for remembering to replace the air filter, which is the kind of invisible act that shoots an arrow right into the "someone sees me" part of your chest. Later I thanked her for texting me a photo of the clouds shaped like a cat trying on a hat. That night, I found an index card on my plate with a badly drawn little dance step map, footsteps numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. Saturday? She'd written in the corner. No flourish. No emoji. I put my hand over it like you do with something that might blow away. This morning, without any plan, the song from the porch slipped out of the radio while I was buttering toast. She was halfway to the back door with the recycling. She stopped. We didn't say anything clever. We just stood in our kitchen between the sink and the stove, the place we're most likely to bump hips by accident, and counted, but not with numbers. Her hand slid into mine like a thought that had found its word. We moved until the toast burned and the smoke alarm did its small, panicked yelp. The dogs howled like we'd joined a band. We laughed and opened the window. There was a breeze where there hadn't been one a minute earlier. That's what it feels like, lately. Like someone cracked a window and forgot to close it, and the air is different, and we're letting it be. Update 5. At 3:11 a.m., she said my name in that way people do when they're asking for a ride to the airport or a lifeline. You awake? The ceiling fan made a sound like a moth in a jar. Let's go see it, she said. I didn't know what it was until I saw the sky through the kitchen window, the kind of black that looks like felt with a million pinholes. We loaded thermoses and a blanket that still smelled like last fall's leaves into the car. She wore my hoodie and socks with little foxes on them. No dogs, it felt like a human errand. We drove to the municipal soccer fields because they're flat and dark and don't ask questions. The air had that penny taste that means morning is closer than you think. We spread the blanket on grass that soaked our knees anyway. 9%, she said into my shoulder. But also stubborn. The meteors came slow at first, needles someone flicked across a huge sheet of black. Then faster. I forgot how quiet a field can be at that hour, like you're sitting inside a held breath. A plane drew a neat bright line miles up, going somewhere that smelled like scrambled eggs and hotels. We guessed destinations just to say names out loud. St. Louis? She said. Or Boise. Somewhere with diner coffee that tastes like a joke, I said. When a big one scratched the sky long enough for both of us to clap like idiots, she slid her cold foot onto my calf and didn't move it. I thought we were done, she said. No drama. Just inventory, I said. Me too, because it felt expensive to lie to the stars. We made a few dumb wishes because we're not above it. Her hair smelled like whatever they put in good hotel soaps. We stayed until the wet had gotten into our bones and the thermoses were empty. On the way home we stopped at a diner that opens when the birds clock in. The waitress had a voice like a harmonica that's been everywhere. You two look like trouble, she said, which is funny at 4:47 a.m. In a room where the other customers were a newspaper delivery guy and a man telling his pancakes a secret. We split a cinnamon roll the size of a hubcap and left covered in sugar grit in relief. Our counselor's homework this week was a nothing thing that turned out to be a something thing. Give the other person 30 minutes of the day back without saying I gave you 30 minutes. I cleaned the gutters after work while she was at an appointment, hands cold and smelling like wet catalogs, leaves black and slick as lasagna noodles. When she got home, she didn't notice, which felt right, which was the point. An hour later there was a sticky note on my wallet, 13%, 34%. Sky looks bigger from the couch. The day after, I came downstairs to find the beast of a laundry mountain sorted into gentle slopes with little cairns of matched socks at the top. My favorite t-shirt, the one the raccoon once tried to steal off a chair, was laid out flat like it had an interview. She didn't announce it. I didn't either. We are both getting a taste for invisible applause. The Friday breakfast friend texted again like a fairy godmother with a Rolodex. You two like mornings. Bring coffee to the airfield fence, she wrote. We did. The chain link at the little airport is more suggestion than wall. The air tasted like hot metal and something sweet and mean, jet fuel and cut grass. A yellow plane that looked like a toy someone left in the sun did tight, satisfying laps, up, down, as if it had forgotten a word and kept circling until it found it. A man in a cap with the plane's tail number embroidered on it waved us through a gate with a key like a church door. You from marketing's crew? He said, and before we could answer, we were in the shade of a wing. Up close, planes look stitched, like someone trusted thread when steel felt too cocky. He opened the little door and said, sit. Don't touch the red things. She climbed in and I watched her face do something complicated. Fear and museum and Christmas morning all taking turns. She put 2 fingers on the yoke like she was greeting a shy cat. I hate heights, she said, and then, I love this, fast, Like the second sentence was trying to catch the first. The man talked about crosswinds and weight and how most good landings are just a series of small corrections. That sentence sat down in my pocket. We ate muffins on the chilly lip of the door like we were on a porch miles above a field and, in a way, we were. On the way out, she took my elbow, a small proprietary thing the bones remembered how to accept. Not everything has a soundtrack and a soft filter. Sunday afternoon, something in the pantry made a sound like a toddler opening bubble wrap, and the raccoon, the same one, I swear, with a scar near his left ear like he's been in arguments, shot out past me with an entire hot dog bun he must have negotiated out from under a half-shut bread bag. He looked at me as he left like, "This is between us, man," and waddled low and fast under the hydrangea. We stood there holding a jar of pickles and laughed until it hurt. 10 minutes later we were on the floor with the dogs because laughter always collects there. We went back to dance class and the suspenders guy called us the porch people in a way that made me feel known. My wife missed a step and then didn't apologize for it. The instructor clapped once and said, "Yes, that's dancing," which I plan to remember in traffic and in grocery store lines. After class, the bun lady pointed at my feet and said, "Your left finally knows your right," which may be the kindest thing anyone's told me this decade. We walked out into a morning that smelled like rain steam off brick. "I'm at 41, she said, surprised by her own math. We celebrated with gas station bananas and a scratch off. We didn't win and it still felt like winning. There was one night, middle of the week, where I got it wrong in the old way. It was a good afternoon and I tried to make it carry water for the whole week. "Do you want to do tacos and then maybe swing by that bookstore and look at the travel table and then we could?" She put her tea down and smiled, that resigned cat trying on a hat smile. "Stacking," she said, and the air went out of the balloon gently instead of with a fart noise. We ate tacos at the counter and put the bookstore in the place in our calendar where good ideas wait their turn. At 9, my phone buzzed from upstairs, 21% but holding. It's a tiny miracle to know what you're being asked to understand. Our daughter sent a link to an estate sale because the pictures look like your first apartment. We went at 9 in the morning with a roll of singles and a tape measure we didn't use. The house smelled like lemons and dust that had learned manners. We ran our hands over a dining table dinged like a map of battles. I bought a box of old 45s because the sleeves had the kind of handwriting that makes you want to know the person. Loopy capital G's, a habit of underlining song names twice. My wife found, under a stack of cookbooks nobody really cooked from, a dog-eared paperback ballroom manual with little ink footprints printing a trail across the page. On the inside cover, someone had written, "Don't count it, feel it," and underlined it in a different pen later, like they forgot and had to remind themselves again. She held it like a found letter. The woman running the sale, sundress, glasses on a beaded chain, said, "Take the book." The lady it belonged to would hate it stuck in a stack. We put $5 in the tin anyway. At home, we put the footprints book on the shelf where we can see it from the sink. Last night, I burned the rice and set off the small, dramatic opera singer that lives inside our smoke detector. The dogs practiced their backup vocals. We flapped towels at the ceiling and then it was too late to make anything fancy. We ate cereal at the counter like people who could turn any meal into a picnic because of who they were facing. The porch string lights came on even though the sun hadn't quite given up yet. She slid an old boarding pass across the counter to me, the paper kind you can still tuck into a book. She'd written over the airline logo in blue pen, "Saturday, stand by for a small adventure. No stacking. Sneakers." I put my finger on the corner to keep it from wandering away. "Copy," I said, because apparently I talk like a pilot now. She bumped my hip with hers. The radio did us the favor of finding our porch song without help. We didn't make a thing of it. We just stood there, between the sink and the stove, watching the pot we weren't boiling and moving like we'd been doing it for 25 years and also like we'd just learned how. The window over the sink was open. The air on my wrists felt like it had walked a long way to get to us. We let it in. I'm learning, mostly tiny corrections and a run of decent landings. And this morning, while we drank our 10 minutes of coffee with our phones face down and the neighbor tried to explain to the raccoon that the garbage can was not a buffet, my wife touched her temple and said, 46, if the wind doesn't change. I saluted like a goofball. She rolled her eyes and smiled with that new slice I still can't name. We're pointed in a direction we both recognize. That's plenty.